What's going on, everyone? It's Gendo here, and you're watching the Higher Tempo Press YouTube channel, where today we're going to take a look and see how Arsenal will get on if Arsene Wenger signs one of his 4 top transfer targets. Now, being an Arsenal fan as of late has really been a trying time. You just saw yourselves get into the Europa League after 2 decades of playing Champions League football. You have Sanchez and Ozil rumored to leave the club, and Giroud, while he's been banging in the goals on an international level, domestically, he's been very underwhelming. So Arsene Wenger needs to go out and get some new, fresh faces to instill some new life into this club and potentially get yourself back into a top 4 spot. Now, Arsene Wenger is known to be going after some youngsters. We're going to highlight 4 French youngsters that Wenger has had his eyes on that could potentially be in an Arsenal shirt for next season. And on that list include a trio of Monaco youngsters being Thomas Lemar, Tiémoué Bakayoko, and Kylian Mbappe, as well as Lyon's Alexander Lacazette. So, without further ado, let's take a look and see how Lacazette gets on in an Arsenal shirt. And just before I run the experiment on all these players, I'd like to put out a little bit of a disclaimer. I simulated this match 1 year into the future to the start of the 2017-18 season, and just let the computer do exactly what it was supposed to do, simulate the season. Much to my surprise, Arsenal not only won the Premier League and the FA Cup, but they also won the Champions League. Imagine that. Arsenal winning a treble going into this experiment. The only time they're probably ever going to do it. So, that being said, they're in the UEFA Super Cup and they're in the FIFA Club World Cup. So when I show the stats for all these players going forward, I'm going to omit those 2 competitions because in real life, that they're not going to factor in. So that being said, let's get back to the scheduled experiment. So it's the start of the 2017-18 season, and it's the start of the transfer window. And Gunners fans are waking up to the fact that Arsene Wenger has just paid the 5th highest amount to bring in an Arsenal player on Alexander Lacazette. Total cost of the transfer is £34.5 million, and for good reason why. Taking a look at some of his stats: 17 finishing, 16 composure. His physicals aren't too shabby either, and 16's in pace, agility, acceleration, decent strength as well at a 15. He's faster, he's more clinical than Olivier Giroud, and that's the reason why Arsene Wenger went after Lacazette in the first place. It would be insane to think that Lacazette is not going to be the full-time replacement for Giroud, that he's not going to be getting the first team football that he so rightly deserves, but it all remains to be seen. So let's zoom ahead 1 year from now and see how Lacazette gets on as a new striker for Arsenal. So it's now the 8th of June 2018, everything in the Premier League as well as European competitions has been completed, but let's first take a look and see how Lacazette has gotten on in his time at Arsenal. And overall, that looks like a very underwhelming first year for a player that has been brought in for £34.5 million. 19 appearances, only 9 of them starts, getting 9 goals, no assists, and a 6.99 average rating. Actually, just taking a look up and down his appearances, they have been mostly substitute. A substitute appearance in the Cup, 4 substitute appearances in continental competitions, and then internationally, all substitute appearances there as well. So Alexander Lacazette has been apparently a super sub for Arsene Wenger, and what exactly did that do to the Gunners? Where exactly did that end up for them? It looks like they finished in 2nd place, 6 points behind Man City, but still firmly within Champions League football. So let's take a look and see how they did in the other competitions, as well as take a look and see how Lacazette's performances had varied from game to game. So going back out and taking a look at the schedule, we're obviously going to remove the Super Cup and the Club World Cup because at the very start of this I said that we're going to remove it and not count that towards anything. And just taking a look and looking at some of these, I see a bevy of green, a lot of green over all competitions. In fact, at the very start, Arsenal beating Tottenham by the score of 3-2 in the Community Shield, but a very noticeable absence of Alexander Lacazette, not even on the bench. So very unfortunate there that he didn't get himself any sort of game time right from the off. So looking down the list, we got a lot of wins, a bit of an unfortunate patch right here with some draws and losses, and in fact, one of those losses knocked them out of the League Cup in the quarterfinals, losing to Spurs by the score of 4-1, and once again, a very noticeable absence of Lacazette, not even putting him on the bench. Very, very suspect, especially since he is that decent of a striker. Let's take a look and see how they did in the FA Cup. They won against Bristol City, they won versus Norwich, but then got knocked out in the 5th round to Chelsea. And once again, lack of Lacazette in the 5th, in the 4th, and in the 3rd round. So once again, why Wenger is not even playing him in these cup matches is very suspect. Why pay all of this money and not play your star striker? At this point, it's going to be your new star striker. Going back up and taking a look at what they did in the Champions League, they had a group of Barcelona, Mönchengladbach, and Besiktas, and it looks like they did fairly well in their group. They picked up 3 wins, a draw, and 2 losses. Lacazette actually playing in that Barcelona match, not much, honestly, as a substitute coming in with a 6-4 there. Didn't play versus Gladbach. Didn't even play versus Besiktas the first time around, and the second time around, not there either. Not against the second time versus Barcelona, and not against Mönchengladbach. He's not being brought in to play in the Cups. He's not getting brought in to play in continental competitions. But anyway, let's take a look and move further down. It looks like they did advance, possibly by going through in 2nd place, and they took on Bayern Munich in the first knockout round, drawing in the first leg, but then winning in the second, winning by the score of 1-0. And once again, Lacazette not really making an appearance. So he did make a substitute appearance in the first leg, didn't even show up in the second. So once again, very disappointing there. And then in the quarterfinals, they lost to PSG on aggregate by the score of 3-2, drawing 1-1 in the first leg, and then the second leg losing 2-1. And once again, no sign of Lacazette. So that would just boil it down to one thing and one thing only, and as we just took a look on his stat screen, all of his major contributions were in the Premier League. So let's take a look and see what exactly were his best and worst performances in Arsenal shirt. And one of the first matches that showed he did anything noteworthy, it was a very underwhelming performance for him in a 2-0 victory versus Manchester United, where yes, he was able to score a goal in the 36th minute, but only a 6.4 average rating. And that is the worst performance that he has had so far this early in the season. So that makes me wonder what else he was doing that caused him to get a 6.4 if he scored a goal on top of that. He may have been out of position, he may have been not conforming well to Wenger's system, and in fact, that could have been very well the reason why he's been mostly coming off the bench instead of making starts, because he wasn't adapting well enough to Wenger's systems. Following that performance versus Manchester United, he was able to get himself a 7+ average rating, and in fact, coming off of the bench, getting the game-winning goal in a 2-1 win versus Bournemouth. 84th minute winner, as you can see right here, 7.6 average rating. And it would be about 4 months before Lacazette did anything noteworthy in the league again, but it was against Bournemouth, and this time he was starting, leading the way for a 3-0 victory, getting himself a brace as well as an 8.5 average rating. And on the last day, overall his worst appearance on the season, even if it was in a sub appearance, getting himself a 6.3 average rating versus Chelsea in a losing effort. So overall, I think it's safe to say that Lacazette definitely deserves better, deserves to be in the starting spot, just needs to be built around. Instead of having to force him into the Wenger system needs to force himself into Lacazette's play style, and that's where I think the major hang-up was. That's why he didn't get a lot of play time, that's why he didn't score a lot of goals. I'm definitely not saying that Lacazette is a bad player. He is more than capable of scoring the goals on his own. It's just that either Wenger needs to change his system or Lacazette is not going to get used to his fullest extent. And that's all I'm saying on the matter. So with that being said, let's move on to the first of our Monaco transfers, Tiémoué Bakayoko. So now we have Tiémoué Bakayoko moving from Monaco to Arsenal, and he moved for a fee of £10 million, which was his estimated value. The 22-year-old can play both defensive mid and center mid, which is a little strange for Arsenal because they have a stockpile of center mids right now that could also play defensive mid. See Granit Xhaka, Mohamed El Neni. Coquelin can play there as well, but I believe Coquelin is on his way out, so that's the reason why Arsene Wenger is trying to go after Bakayoko. But the 22-year-old doesn't look all that bad stats-wise. If you take a look, especially some of his defensive and physical stats, especially that you need to look for in a defensive mid, they're all not bad. As you can see, physically, he doesn't have anything under a 12, especially his strength and stamina, which is what you need to be a destroyer, an anchor man in the middle of the park. And if he's going to be playing more of a defensive mid in Wenger's system, you got to take a look at the defensive stats as well. 14 marking, 13 tackling, 13 positioning. He does have some decent first touch, technique, and good passing to get himself out of danger. So on paper, this looks like a great value for money signing, but as I just mentioned, the center mids before that Wenger has at his disposal, and possibly even more behind that, who even knows if Bakayoko is going to see any playing time on the pitch? So let's take a look 1 year into the future and see if Bakayoko does see a match in an Arsenal shirt. So like before, it's the 8th of June 2018, and let's take a look and see how Bakayoko has gotten on before we take a look at how Arsenal did as a whole. And it looks like that Bakayoko has been stuck in the under 23s in the Arsenal reserve side, and it's very clear that he did not get a single game within the league this year. Playing mostly in the under 23s, he did get a lot of playtime within the cups, be it the League Cup or the FA Cup, as you can see, scoring 2 goals, getting 2 assists, a 7.23 average rating. As we mentioned before, we're not going to take a look at continental competitions, but overall, Bakayoko not seeing a single first team match in an Arsenal shirt is very disappointing, especially for the money that Arsene paid for him. This is a bit of a downer. So Bakayoko doesn't have a lot of matches in a senior shirt that we can judge him on. I highlighted the Community Shield in both the FA Cup and EFL Cup because those were the matches that he played with the senior team. And as you can see, right off the bat, didn't do too well. A 6-3 versus Tottenham in the Community Shield, not doing too well there. But in the EFL Cup, though, he did score a goal, the opening goal against Stevenage in the 3rd round, getting himself an 8.8 average rating. That was the best rating that he had over all of these matches. Didn't play against Leeds, didn't play against Watford whatsoever. And then in their only match in the FA Cup this year, they got knocked down in the 3rd round by Liverpool by the score of 2-1, and Bakayoko, easily his worst performance in a senior shirt, 6.2 and a yellow card. But then turning it back to the EFL Cup, Arsenal were able to overturn a 2-0 deficit in the first leg to Bournemouth, where Bakayoko didn't play whatsoever, to come back and win 3-2 on aggregate. Bakayoko, once again, not a good day at the office, a 6.3 average. And then against Liverpool in the final, he did not even see the pitch. 3-1, losing to Liverpool in the EFL Cup final. Bakayoko, like I said, just a lot of poor performances when he was on the pitch. He was able to come away with a decent performance versus Colchester in the Checkatrade Trophy, getting himself a goal as well as an 8.6 average rating, but the under-23s themselves did not get out of their group. So overall, this is projecting to be a very poor signing by Wenger, as Bakayoko didn't even get a single start in the Premier League, only relegated to cups, and even then he was very spotty in his performances. So nothing more to say except that Bakayoko seems to be a dud of a transfer, at least in this first season. So let's move on and see how Kylian Mbappe gets on as an Arsenal player. So once again, it's the start of the 2017-18 season, and the transfer window has just opened up, and Arsene Wenger shells out the release clause fee of £17 million to bring in Kylian Mbappe from Monaco to Arsenal. The 18-year-old winger looks very decent right now as a player, and we all know he's been killing it in real life, but take a look at some of his stats. Hasn't really reciprocated over to Football Manager at this point in time, but he is looking decent enough as a developmental player. Looking at some of his physical stats: 14 pace, 15 acceleration. Stats that you need to look for in a winger: 15 dribbling, 13 crossing, 13 first touch, 16 technique on the mental side, 16 determination, 17 flair, 12 vision. That could be a little bit better, but he's only 18 and he's got nowhere to go but up. And with such a high ceiling potential, will Arsene Wenger give Mbappe the playing time that he needs in an Arsenal shirt, not just as development, but also to grow and gel with the rest of the Arsenal squad? So let's jump ahead 1 year from now and see how well Mbappe gets on as an Arsenal player. And once again, it's the 8th of June 2018. Let's take a look and see how Mbappe has gotten on. And already, whoa, wait a minute, he has been loaned out. He got loaned out to Stuttgart from Arsenal. Was it loaned out for the entire season? It was. He did not get a single match under his belt with Arsene Wenger and Arsenal. He was loaned out to Stuttgart, where he played 32 matches, got 5 goals, 3 assists, and a 6.84 average rating. Not bad for a player that has the potential that he does, but I thought that Arsene Wenger would have at least developed him from within instead of shipping him off to a different team entirely. This is completely different than Bakayoko, where Bakayoko, yes, he played with the Arsenal squad, so we got a sense that he could play with the team. Kylian didn't even get a single match with Arsenal, so we can't judge him compared to the other players because, like I said, he didn't play for Arsenal. In the short term, this would not be considered a good transfer because Wenger did not vet him through the Arsenal system himself, and he didn't learn from other players that played with Arsenal, doesn't know the Arsenal system, the Arsenal way. He instead get loaned out to Stuttgart, where clearly he was able to get first-team football, but now he's going to come back to Arsenal, and it's like starting all over again. So while I think that in the future Mbappe can kill it, he is a decent prospect, a decent player as it is right now, seeing that he doesn't even get a shot, not even a chance in the Arsenal system, in the Arsenal formation, this is a bit of a downer. And so with that being said, let's move on to our final speculative transfer from Monaco, Thomas Lemar. And finally, we come to the transfer that many believe is the most plausible, as well as the one that might actually get done. Thomas Lemar going to Arsenal for a fee of £25 million, and overall, he's definitely a lot better than Mbappe is. He's 3 years older, looks more developed, and honestly, under the tutelage of Wenger and the Arsenal system, could be even better. Just taking a look at the stats that he has now, he is quick. 16 pace, 16 acceleration and agility, decent on the stamina side, 15 there. Mentally looks great as well, 15 determination, 16 flair, work rate is 16 as well, which is absolutely necessary if you're going to be going up and down the wings. And then as far as the technical side for a winger, 16 dribbling, 16 first touch, 16 on corners, which may not be necessary, but it's good to have, 15 in crossing, 17 in technique. Thomas Lemar is the real deal. And alongside with Mbappe was one of the major factors why Monaco won Ligue 1 last season. Now, Lemar is no stranger to somebody coming after him. He originally started in the Guadeloupe system, then was bought up by Cayenne in France, stayed there for a few seasons before then moving to Monaco. He's only been there for 2 seasons, but with the immense talent that Lemar has, it's almost certain that he's going to be moving to a big team, Arsenal or somebody else. So, with that being said, let's take a look and see how Lemar's development and season goes while at Arsenal. So I actually set this one up to go a little bit further. It's now the 15th of June, 2018. Let's take a look and see how Lemar got on in an Arsenal jersey. And he had the most playtime out of everybody. Out of every other player in this experiment, he had the most playtime. 24 starts, 34 appearances, 10 goals, 9 assists, 5 player of the matches, and a 7.65 average rating. And out of all competitions, he got himself 53 appearances, 15 goals, and 13 assists with a 7.55 average rating. Also worth noting that he didn't get a single France cap until he moved to Arsenal. All 9 of his caps and all 5 of his goals coming while he moved to Arsenal. So right there and then shows that Lemar can do it domestically and internationally, which shows that he is a quality player. Now let's take a look at how the Arsenal squad did with him on that left-hand side. And did it prove to be beneficial? And it did, but they just missed out on winning the title. 1 point behind Spurs, who eventually won it, but not that bad whatsoever. Coming in 2nd place, getting back into the Champions League. And let's take a look and see how they did in the other competitions. Obviously, we get rid of the Super Cup and the Club World Cup, but a 5-0 battering in the Community Shield versus Spurs. It doesn't look like that he got himself a start. Maybe he actually got himself a substitute appearance. So a sub appearance and a 6-8, not all that badly. Let's take a look and see how they did in the Champions League. They had a group consisting of Atletico Madrid, Sporting Lisbon, and Dynamo Kiev, and it looks like they didn't lose. They didn't lose a single one of their matches, going 5-1-0 and moving into the knockout stage. And actually, they went all the way down. They got themselves through to the first knockout round. They took on Athletic Bilbao, blasted through them. Did Lemar actually play in these matches? He got a 9-1 in the first leg versus Athletic, and then coming off the bench, got a goal and a 7-6 in the second leg. Taking a look at how they did in Real Madrid, a 1-0 victory, started and got a 7-5, and in the second leg, started and got an 8-4. So right there and then, Lemar showing that he is a difference maker on the squad. Going into the semifinals, they took on PSG and battered them by the score of 5-2. Thomas Lemar has definitely got to be in the starting side because he's played French squads before. In the first leg, got himself a 7-2, and in the second leg, got himself a brace and an 8-6. Easily his best of the season right there and then in the semifinals. So then they took on Manchester United in the final, but unfortunately lost by the score of 1-0, a Zlatan Ibrahimovic goal in the 93rd minute. What unfortunate luck there. Thomas Lemar once again starting in a 7.9 average rating. So throughout the entirety of the Champions League, Thomas Lemar showing that he is a well put together player and can produce a decent amount of chances that Arsenal can act on. It's just unfortunate he wasn't able to get the job done here. Arsenal just missing out on a Champions League trophy there. Take a look at the other competitions. I noticed they got knocked out by Burnley in the 4th round of the League Cup, 2-2 on penalties. And it looks like everybody hit their penalty kicks until Arsenal's McGann missed it, losing 7-6 on penalties. So very unfortunate to get out of the League Cup there, but I'm sure Arsenal were not caring about the League Cup at that point in time. As far as the FA Cup goes, they started in the 3rd round. They drew to Spurs 0-0 away, but then at home they lose 2-1. Lamar did get a goal, also got himself a yellow card and a 7.7 average rating, but it wasn't enough. Spurs knocking them out at the first hurdle of the FA Cup. Man, after the walloping that Spurs took in the Community Shield, I'm sure the board and the fans were not too happy after this London derby. But so we know how Thomas Lemar did outside of the Premier League. Let's take a look and see the results of what he did within the league itself. What were his best and worst performances within the league? And right out of the gate, the second match in, it was a match versus Derby County where Arsenal won 3-0. Thomas Lemar getting himself a goal and an 8.7 average rating. Must have been all those crosses and key passes that helped his average rating out. But then following that up in a loss to Liverpool, he got himself an even better rating, an 8.8, alongside with scoring a goal. So even in a loss, even in a defeat, Thomas Lemar showing that he can ball and he can do the business out there. Every match after that, even in a substitute appearance, Thomas Lemar getting above a 7. A 7-3 here versus Man United, an 8-4 here versus Bournemouth, and a goal. And while going down the list, we can go on and on and on. He had himself a bevy of 7+. It was this match, another London derby, mind you, that he picked up his worst game of the season. He had himself a 6.5 average rating. He didn't get anything below that. This was his worst game, and also happened to be in a 1-0 loss to Spurs, which Spurs player Eric Lamela getting sent off in the 5th minute, and the Gunners couldn't capitalize on it. But considering the turnaround that Arsenal then pulled after that, only losing 2 more league matches the rest of the way en route to 2nd place, absolute scenes. And knowing that Thomas Lemar was at the forefront of it alongside with Ozil and Sanchez and Giroud definitely makes for some interesting watching for the Gunners going forward. So it seems that Football Manager favors Thomas Lemar to be the best value for money that Arsene Wenger can pick up in this offseason with the amount of goals and assists they put forward. That's not to say that Lacazette can't do the same thing, it's just that he was coming off the bench, whereas Lemar slotted directly into the starting 11 of Wenger. And then taking a look at Bakayoko and Mbappe, that they didn't even play a single minute for an Arsenal shirt, I don't agree with that, especially with Mbappe. I don't see him being loaned out if he does come into Arsenal because of how he's been doing in real life. Arsene Wenger could easily slot him into his starting 11. But anyway, Gunners fans, please let me know what you thought in the comments box below about this experiment. Do you see Arsene Wenger signing any one of these 4? And could they slot into your squad right away? Please let me know in the comment box below. And to everybody else, please leave suggestions for experiments that you'd like to see on this channel going forward. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Higher Tempo Press YouTube channel. This has been Gendo, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and peace out.